I paid my brother's education for 3 years while my parents called me a cheap son because I lived with them. I shocked everyone when I stopped paying and left after. I still remember the exact moment I realized I was being used. It wasn't a dramatic argument or a major betrayal, just an offhand remark from my brother Kevin as I handed him cash for books. "Why do I always have to ask you for this stuff?" he said, rolling his eyes. "If you know I need it, just give it to me." For 3 years, I had paid for Kevin's college tuition, books, and just about everything else he needed. I even bought him an old pickup truck when I saw him walking to campus one day. I thought he'd be grateful, but instead he acted like I'd insulted him. "How come you get to drive a nice car and I get this junk?" he complained. I didn't say anything, but inside it hurt. Here's the thing, I never owed Kevin anything. My parents weren't struggling. They just didn't want to stretch their budget to support 2 kids. I had gotten a good job out of college and was living at home to save money. It seemed practical at first, but over time it became clear that my parents saw me as their personal ATM. They called me cheap because I didn't want to spend money on things I didn't need: fancy vacations, new gadgets, but they had no problem asking me for hundreds, sometimes thousands, to cover Kevin's expenses. "You're the older brother," my mother would say. "It's your responsibility to help him out." My dad would chime in. "You live here rent-free. Don't you think it's time you gave something back?" But here's the kicker, they kept hinting that it was time for me to move out. "A man your age shouldn't be living with his parents," they'd say one day, and the next they'd ask for help with groceries, the electric bill, or fixing something around the house. It was a never-ending cycle. For 3 years, I kept my mouth shut and gave them what they wanted. I told myself that was what families did. But the more I gave, the less I felt like a son or a brother. I felt like a bank. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It was more like a slow build-up that finally reached its limit. I began to notice little things that made me feel, well, used. Kevin never thanked me for anything. Not for paying his tuition, not for the pickup truck, and certainly not for the clothes and gadgets I had bought him over the years. If anything, he acted like it was his birthright. When he wasn't complaining about the truck being too old, he was bitching about how his friends got to go on spring break trips or had the latest cell phones. My parents weren't any better. They were always quick to praise Kevin for his grades or how hard he was trying, but when it came to me, it was mostly criticism. "You're getting older. Don't you think it's time you got your own place?" Or, "You work all the time, but what are you really doing with your life?" It was like they didn't see all the sacrifices I was making to support them and Kevin. The worst part? They made me feel like I owed them something. Every time I tried to talk about how I felt, they'd shut me down. "We're family. Family helps each other," my mother would say, as if that was the end of the conversation. But one night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was scrolling through Reddit, venting about my situation in a post, when I got a response that hit me like a ton of bricks. "Why do you set yourself on fire to keep her warm?" I stared at that sentence for a long time. It summed up everything I felt. I had worked myself into the ground, paid for everything, and what did I get in return? Nothing but complaints, guilt, and this overwhelming feeling that I wasn't doing enough. This post blew up, and the responses were eye-opening. People told me I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. They pointed out how toxic my family's behavior was and that it was okay to set boundaries. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. The next day, I decided that things had to change. After that Reddit post, I couldn't stop thinking about what people had said. Words like boundaries, self-respect, and toxic family dynamics kept swirling around in my head. It was like I had been walking around with blinders on and suddenly I could see everything clearly. I began to keep track of everything I'd done for Kevin and my parents over the past 3 years. Tuition, books, clothes, food, car repairs, even the damn pickup truck. When I added it up, the number made me sick. I had poured tens of thousands of dollars into supporting them, and for what? That Saturday we had a family dinner. My mother had made one of her big dinners: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. It was supposed to be a nice evening, but I knew what I had to say, and my stomach was in knots. We were halfway through dinner when my dad made a comment about Kevin needing new tires for the truck. "You should take care of that this weekend," he said, like it was a given. I put down my fork and said, "Actually, I'm not going to pay for that. Or anything else, for that matter." The table fell silent. My mom looked at me as if I'd just insulted her cooking. Kevin grinned, probably thinking I was joking. "I'm serious," I said. "I've paid for everything: your tuition, your clothes, even this truck, and I'm done. I'm not your parent, Kevin. And I'm not Mom and Dad's backup retirement plan." Kevin's smirk disappeared. My mom started to say something, but I cut her off. "You've been telling me for years that it's time for me to move out, haven't you? Well, you're getting your wish. I'm leaving." The silence was deafening. My dad finally spoke up and said something about the family sticking together, but I wasn't buying it. Family sticks together? Does it really? Because all I've ever felt is used. I told them I'd already found an apartment in another state. My lease started the next month. I didn't ask for their permission or blessing, I just let them know. The moment I said I was leaving, everything exploded. My mom launched into a speech about how ungrateful I was for everything they'd done for me. My dad called me selfish, and Kevin just sat there with his arms folded, glaring at me like I'd betrayed him personally. "You're leaving us?" my mom said. "How could you?" I told her I wasn't leaving anyone. I was just setting limits. "I've been helping all of you for years," I said. "But it's never enough. You call me cheap because I live here, but you're happy to take my money when it suits you. I'm tired of feeling like I don't matter unless I pay for something." Kevin finally spoke up. "You're such a hypocrite. You make all this money and act like you're doing me a favor. It's your duty as my brother to help me." I stared at him, stunned. "My duty? Kevin, I paid for your entire education. I bought you a truck so you wouldn't have to walk. I paid for things that Mom and Dad should have paid for, and you think this is my duty? I don't owe you anything." That set him off. He started ranting about how I thought I was better than him because I had a good job and how I should have bought him a decent car if I was going to buy one at all. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad jumped in and said I shouldn't talk to Kevin like that, but I wouldn't let him. "You've been enabling this attitude for years," I said. "You made me feel like I had to step in because you didn't want to. Well, guess what? I'm done playing that role." I got up and walked away from the table. My mom was crying, my dad was seething, and Kevin was muttering under his breath, but I didn't care. I went to my room, closed the door, and started packing. I slept better that night than I had in years. The days after that dinner were tense. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was to try to guilt me into reconsidering. Kevin acted like I didn't exist, stomping around the house and slamming doors whenever I was in the room. I ignored it all. I spent my evenings packing my things and finalizing the details of my move. I'd found a job in another state, a smaller city with a lower cost of living, and an apartment that felt like a fresh start. One night, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "Are you really going to leave us like this?" she asked. "What are we going to do without your help?" It was hard to keep my voice calm. "You'll be fine," I said. "You managed before I started helping, and you'll manage again. I'm not in charge of this family's finances." She shook her head, as if I was being unreasonable. "It's not about money," she said. "It's about the family. You're turning your back on us." I didn't argue. I'd learned there was no point in trying to explain myself. They didn't want to hear it. They just wanted me to keep playing my role as the dutiful son, no questions asked. When moving day finally came, I packed up my car, said a quick goodbye, and left. My mom was crying, my dad barely looked at me, and Kevin didn't even come out of his room. Driving away felt surreal. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I had spent so much of my life putting their needs before my own that I didn't even know what my life looked like anymore. but I was determined to find out. Moving to a new state felt like a step into the unknown, but it was also liberating. My new apartment wasn't anything fancy, just a one-bedroom with mismatched furniture I'd picked up at thrift stores, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something for myself instead of for everyone else. The first week was weird. I'd wake up expecting to hear my mom knocking on my door or Kevin barging in to ask for money. My phone was eerily silent. No texts, no calls. It was as if I had disappeared from their lives overnight. At first, the silence felt like rejection. I kept telling myself, "They'll call soon. They just need time." But as the days turned into weeks, I realized they didn't need me. They needed my money, my support, my willingness to sacrifice for them. Without those things, I was irrelevant. I tried not to let it get to me. Instead, I threw myself into my new life. My job in the new state was solid, the hours were better, and the people were friendly. I joined a local hiking group and spent my weekends exploring trails, something I hadn't done in years. I even started picking up old hobbies, painting, reading, and experimenting in the kitchen. One night I logged back onto Reddit and posted an update. I shared how I'd finally moved, set boundaries, and started living for myself. The response was incredible. Hundreds of people commented, congratulating me and sharing their own stories of breaking free from toxic family dynamics. One comment stuck with me. "You don't owe anyone your peace. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary. You're finally giving yourself the life you deserve." Reading these words gave me a strange sense of validation. For years, I'd been made to feel guilty for wanting to keep something for myself, whether it was my time, my money, or my peace of mind. Now I began to see that wanting these things wasn't selfish. It was human. But I still thought about my family. I wondered how they were getting along without me. Had Kevin finally gotten a job to help with his own expenses? Did my parents regret the way they treated me, or were they just angry that I wasn't around to bail them out? There were moments of doubt, of course. It wasn't easy to cut ties with people who had been my whole world, no matter how flawed that world was. But every time I started to feel guilty, I'd remember the years of thankless sacrifice, the endless demands, and the way they'd dismiss me as soon as I stopped giving. And the truth was, I felt lighter. Freer. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's burden. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that made all the difference. About 3 months after I moved, just as I was starting to feel like I'd completely left that chapter of my life behind, I got an email from Kevin. I almost deleted it without reading it. I hadn't heard a word from him or my parents since the day I left, and I wasn't sure I wanted to open that door again. But curiosity got the better of me. The email was short, uncharacteristically for Kevin. He didn't ask for money or complain. Instead, he said he wanted to talk. "I know I've been a jerk," he wrote. "I think I finally understand why you left, and I'm sorry. I just want to explain some things. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen, unsure of how I should feel. Was this real? Or was it a ploy to make me feel guilty about coming back? Against my better judgment, I decided to answer. I told him I wasn't ready to meet in person, but I was willing to listen if he wanted to explain. His reply came the next day. He admitted that he'd been angry at first, furious, actually because he felt abandoned. But after I left, things changed. My parents, he said, had started pressuring him to pick up where I left off. They wanted him to get a part-time job to help with the bills, even though he was still in school. "They told me it was my responsibility now," he wrote. "I guess I didn't realize how much they were doing until I had to deal with it myself." He went on to describe how hard it had been to juggle classes and work, how my parents had started guilt-tripping him the same way they had guilt-tripped me. "I used to think you had it easy because you had a good job," he said. "But now I see how much they lean on you. I don't know how you put up with it for so long." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from Kevin. But the most surprising part came at the end of his email. "I don't think I can stay here either. I've been saving up, and as soon as I can, I'm leaving too. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done for me, even though I didn't appreciate it at the time. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Maybe things could change. Later, I received a letter from my parents. Not an email, not a text, a physical, handwritten letter. It was from my mother, and the tone was different. Gone were the guilt and accusations. Instead, it was filled with something I hadn't heard from her in years: remorse. She admitted that she and my father had been wrong to rely so heavily on me, to take my contributions for granted, and to treat me unfairly. She said they had been forced to reevaluate a lot of things since I left, especially now that Kevin was struggling with the same pressures they'd put on me. The letter went on to say that their financial situation wasn't as stable as they had let on. My father's hours at work had been cut years ago, and instead of making changes to their lifestyle, they'd lean on me to fill the gap. It wasn't fair to put this on you, she wrote. We should have been honest, but we were too proud to admit that we needed help. And we were wrong to treat your help as something we were entitled to. She also mentioned how much they missed me, not just the support I provided, but me. We realized that we had pushed you away by the way we treated you, she wrote. I don't blame you for leaving. I just hope it's not too late to make things right. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part of me wondered if this was just another way to drag me back into the fold. A week later, my father called me. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to answer. To my surprise, he sounded different. He was awkward, fumbling with his words, but the gist was clear. He wanted to apologize. I know I haven't been the best father, he said. I pushed too hard, took too much, and didn't say thank you enough. I can't change what happened, but I want to try to make things better. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years, and for the first time it felt like he was talking to me as a person, not just as a son who owed him. I didn't rush to forgive. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and I wasn't about to move back or start sending money regularly. But after some thought, I decided to extend an olive branch. I sent them $5,000 not as an ongoing commitment, but as a gesture of good faith. I made it clear that this was a one-time thing, not a return to the old dynamic. I want to help you get back on your feet, I told them, but I have to keep my boundaries. This is something I can do because I want to, not because I feel I have to. To my surprise, they graciously accepted. My mom sent a thank you card, and my dad called again, this time just to check in and see how I was doing. As for Kevin, he followed through with his plan. A few months later, he moved out and started supporting himself. He reached out to me a few times, and we slowly began to rebuild our relationship as well. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. In the end, I didn't regret leaving. It was the wake-up call my family needed, and it gave me a chance to finally live my own life. I still have boundaries, but I don't carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm part of a family, not a bank.